A stick snapped. Then this dragging sound, something heavy sliding through leaves. And then his voice, "Thought I might catch up with ya." I grabbed my knife and flashlight, heart in my throat. He stepped into the clearing, all calm, like this was normal. Same clothes, same knife. His smile was different, though. Forced, maybe. Sharper. "You sleeping yet?" he asked, like it was a joke. I didn't answer. I just stood up, putting my back against the shelter wall. "You left awful quick," he said. Didn't even say goodbye. He didn't come closer. Just stood at the edge of the lean-to in the moonlight, swinging that knife at his side. "Some folks," he muttered, "don't know how to be grateful." Then he turned and walked back into the woods. No big finale, no charge, just walked away, like it had all been for nothing. I didn't sleep, just sat there gripping the knife until the sun started creeping through the trees. He was gone, but behind me, scratched into the wood with something sharp, were the words, "Still watching you." I ran. Didn't stop to eat, didn't stop to rest. I hit the first road I found and flagged down a truck driver. He took one look at me and said I looked like hell. I told him I'd had a rough night. I'd never told anyone else. Not my parents, not the cops, not the trail office. What would I even say? I never went back. I work in trail restoration. It's not glamorous, and it's definitely not what I imagined doing when I was a kid, but I've grown to appreciate it. I get paid to be alone in the woods, fixing up forgotten trails and abandoned ranger posts. Most days, it's peaceful. Just me, the tools on my back, and the dirt under my boots. I'm used to working solo. In fact, I prefer it. I grew up in a house where the TV was always on, doors slammed constantly, and someone was always yelling across the hall. Out here, I can hear myself think. It's one of the few places I actually feel normal. Last October, I got a contract near the Tennessee-Kentucky border. They wanted me to inspect and start prepping an old ranger outpost for restoration. According to the brief, the cabin had been unused for over 10 years and sat about 5 miles off the nearest fire road. No power, no plumbing, no trail access. It wasn't even on most updated maps. I said yes without blinking. The more remote, the better. The road was washed out, so they had to fly me in by helicopter. That should have been my first hint that this wasn't a normal job. As the chopper lifted off and vanished over the canopy, I felt this weird drop in my chest, like someone had just pulled a rug out from under me, and I was waiting to hit the floor. The cabin looked like it had been dragged out of a horror movie set. The roof sagged like it was exhaling its last breath, moss draped over the walls like a bad wig, and one of the windows was held together by a slap of duct tape and hope. But structurally, it wasn't as bad as it looked. I could work with it. I spent the first 2 days clearing out debris, patching the worst holes, and organizing the supplies from the drop. I found some old ranger logs in a dusty cabinet, entries from the 90s, mostly weather notes and wildlife sightings. Nothing weird, nothing useful either. But on the third night, I started hearing the ticking. It sounded like someone tapping lightly on wood with metal. Tick, tick, tick. Always 3, always slow. Too slow to be a woodpecker and too deliberate. It came from the tree line, just far enough that my headlamp couldn't reach it. When I pointed my light toward it, silence. Turned away, tick, tick, tick again. That's when I started sleeping with my multi-tool under my pillow. Not that it would have helped. Next morning, I opened the cabin door and found 3 small stones stacked on the threshold. Perfectly balanced, smooth and pale like river rock. I stared at them for maybe a full minute before kicking them over. Thought it might have been erosion or an animal. That's what I told myself anyway. Later that afternoon, I hiked up the ridge to try and get a signal. The sat phone only worked if I held it in the exact right spot. Arm extended over the edge of a bluff, standing on one leg like a goddamn scarecrow. I managed to send out my coordinates and a quick check-in to base. It took 5 minutes just to send 1 bar of text. On the way back, I noticed a trail I hadn't seen before. It wasn't overgrown, it was too clear, like someone had brushed the leaves aside recently. There weren't any markers, no blazes, no signs of old use. I should have ignored it, but something about the way it curved into the trees made me follow it. Maybe half a mile in, I came across this clearing. In the center stood a tree, burnt to a crisp, black as coal, still standing. Like lightning had struck it years ago and it just never bothered to fall. Around it were stone stacks, dozens of them, arranged in spirals and arcs. Some had feathers sticking out. Others had what looked like red finger smears across the surfaces. I couldn't tell if it was blood or clay or something else. The formations didn't make sense, but they weren't random either. Then I heard it. Tick, tick, tick. Closer now. I spun around, scanning the trees. Nothing, but I swear I saw the bark on that blackened tree shimmer. Just for a second, like heat rising off pavement, or something slipping behind it. I backed away slowly, then turned and walked as fast as I could without breaking into a full run. When I got back to the cabin, I bolted the door and dragged a shelving unit in front of it. My hands were shaking. My mouth was dry. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there, watching the ceiling, listening. At some point, the whispering started. It didn't sound like words at first, more like someone mumbling just out of earshot. But then it began repeating a phrase, low and rhythmic. Leave him, leave him, leave him. I didn't move. Just stared at the window and gripped my multi-tool like it was a crucifix. Next morning, I opened the door. The stones were back, stacked on the door handle this time, balanced with surgical precision. On top was a rabbit's skull. No fur, no blood. The back of the skull was hollowed out cleanly, like someone had scooped the brain with a spoon. No predator did that. That's when I stopped pretending this was anything close to normal. I climbed back to the ridge and tried sending an emergency signal. Sat phone glitched out. Signal wouldn't hold. Message wouldn't send. It beeped a low battery warning, then blinked out completely. 1 bar left. No time to try again. I ran back. No trail. I just followed a dry creek bed downhill, hoping it would lead somewhere, anywhere. But the terrain was steep and I slipped more than once, twisted my ankle, kept going. I made it back to the cabin before dark and didn't turn the lights on. I sat in silence, holding my breath every time a board creaked. Around 2 in the morning, I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the clearing. It was tall, lanky. Its arms hung too low. Its head looked like a hollow tree stump. It swayed slowly from side to side, like it was listening to something only it could hear. I stared for maybe 5 seconds before it moved. Not forward, just closer. 1 second it was at the tree line, the next it was 20 feet nearer. I didn't see it move, I just blinked and it was there. Then it made the sound, tick, 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 not out loud, inside me. I felt it behind my sternum like something cracking gently against my ribs. I curled into a ball on the floor and squeezed my eyes shut until the sound stopped. At sunrise, I opened the door, hoping it was all just in my head. On the inside of the window, smeared in something dark, were the words, "He's still here." That was the end of it for me. I packed everything I could grab and bolted. I didn't care where the real trail was. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs turned to jelly. I followed the creek bed down the ridge and through God knows how many switchbacks until I saw the ranger station. When they found me, I looked like hell, covered in scratches, caked in mud, my lips cracked from dehydration. They didn't believe a word I said. According to them, the cabin I was assigned to had been decommissioned for 15 years. No current work orders, no official drops. But I had the key, the logbook, the confirmation emails, my report. They called it isolation stress, gave me medical leave, told me to get some rest. I still work outdoors, still love the woods, but I never go alone anymore. I was 21 when this happened. I'm not the superstitious type, never was. But after that weekend in the mountains, I stopped pretending that everything can be explained. There are places out there that don't want to be found. places that remember you. This all started when midterms hit. I was barely sleeping, living off vending machine coffee and caffeine pills. Griff, my roommate, could tell I was running on fumes. One night, after I nearly face-planted into my textbook, he tossed me a bag of trail mix and said, "You need a reset, man, a full disconnect." I didn't argue. His cousin Bree had a friend who owned a cabin out near Black Hollow. Deep woods, no cell towers, no neighbors. Bree vouched for it. It was rustic, quiet, off-grid. Sounded like heaven after a week of library lights and essay deadline. So we planned a quick overnight trip. Me, Griff, Bree, Marcos, JD, we still called him Lenny then, and Hannah. 6 of us, 1 Jeep, way too many bags for one night. We left Friday afternoon, blasting music, talking over each other, half the snacks gone before we even hit the hills. Griff's GPS died an hour before we got there, and we had to rely on a screenshot Bree had taken of a map. The last stretch of road was brutal. Dirt path, maybe 1 lane wide, hugging the side of a steep drop. The trees got denser the higher we went. No road signs, no houses, just forest. By the time we reached the cabin, the sun had already ducked behind the ridge. The place looked like it had been standing there for 50 years and might collapse if someone sneezed too hard. It was this weathered A-frame, half swallowed by moss and vines. There was one way in, a clearing just big enough for the Jeep to turn around and nothing but trees beyond that. Still, we were pumped. Bree was already unpacking beers, Griff found firewood behind the shed. We all fell into our usual roles. Marcos got the Bluetooth speaker working, barely. JD claimed the biggest room, and Hannah took over the fire pit like she'd been born in flannel. It actually felt like a good call. We cooked hot dogs on sticks, burned half the marshmallows, shared dumb stories from freshman year. For a while, it was perfect, until it wasn't. Around 10, I started feeling off. Not scared exactly, just uneasy. Like I was on a stage and someone I couldn't see was sitting in the back row, staring. It wasn't the kind of fear you can talk yourself out of. It settled in your gut. I tried brushing it off, sipped my beer, looked at the stars. Then I saw it. Something in the trees. Just past the firelight where the woods started to turn pitch black. A figure. Standing still, upright, watching. I nudged Griff. "You see that?" He squinted. "Probably just a deer, but it didn't feel like a deer. Deer move. This thing didn't. It just stood there, half-shadowed, like it was waiting for a cue." Hannah must have noticed us staring. She stood up and called out, "Bree, that you?" Bree had gone inside a few minutes earlier to grab more blankets. No answer. Then the shape raised its arm and waved. Something about the motion was wrong. Too slow, too calculated, like it was copying the idea of a wave but hadn't practiced it enough. Then Bree stepped out onto the porch dragging a quilt. "What are you yelling about?" she asked. We turned back to the trees. The figure was gone. Griff's hand tightened around his beer. "You saw that too, right?" "Yeah," I said quietly. It waved at us. We killed the fire after that, locked the doors, checked the windows even though most didn't close all the way. The cabin popped and creaked like it was settling into its own grave. Griff pulled an old hunting rifle off the wall. Bree said it hadn't been fired in years, but we found some dusty shells in the drawer next to old board games and expired bug spray. Marcos and I checked the back window that faced the shed. That's when Marcos froze. "There's someone by the shed." We all rushed to the kitchen window. Standing just to the left of the tool shed was a figure. Hoodie, jeans, same build as Hannah, but it wasn't her. Its head was tilted unnaturally to the side, mouth hanging open, arms limp but twitching slightly like it didn't know what to do with them. One hand scraped across the side of the shed, fingers bent in impossible angles, and then it screamed. The sound didn't come from outside. It came from under us, like the house itself was screaming, boards vibrating, nails groaning, something deep and wet and angry pushing through the floor. Griff dropped the beer bottle he'd been clutching. Bree screamed. JD just stood there, frozen solid. The figure by the shed started moving toward us. Slow, jerky steps, like a puppet being yanked on crooked strings. I scrambled for the rifle. Found the shells. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped one on the floor and couldn't find it again. I shoved the others into the chamber, and then it spoke. In my voice, it called my name, not like a question, like a command. Then it laughed. This broken, high-pitched giggle. And it started repeating things. Things I'd said earlier that day. Stupid phrases. Old inside jokes I hadn't said in years. Every word exact. Same rhythm, same tone. Like it had been listening, Griff lost it. Threw the door open and fired. The echo rolled down the hill like thunder. Silence followed. No scream, no blood, just fog slowly curling over the porch, like nothing had ever been there. We didn't sleep, we didn't talk, we just sat in a tight circle, backs to the wall. Bree whispered what I think were prayers. Marcos didn't let go of the fireplace poker for hours. JD kept muttering, "Not real. It's not real. It's not real." Sometime after 3, the smell hit us. Rotten meat, sweet and wet. It soaked into everything, our clothes, our hair, the air in our lungs. JD ran to the sink and threw up. The rest of us gagged or covered our faces with our sleeves. And just like the scream, it vanished. That was it. We weren't waiting for sunrise. We packed up whatever we could grab in 2 minutes. Bree had the keys, Griff drove. We didn't even look back. Halfway down the mountain, still fog everywhere, my phone buzzed. No signal, one voicemail from my number. I shouldn't have played it. The first thing I heard was breathing. Wet, labored, like someone struggling to stay upright. Then my voice, relentlessly, eyeballing, "Let me in." The same scream followed, and in the background, barely audible, I swear, I heard the cabin door creak open. We never went back. None of us talked about it for months. Bree cut ties with the guy who owned the cabin. JD changed schools. I still hear from Hannah and Griff sometimes, but we don't mention Black Hollow, not anymore. I was 17 the last time I hiked the ridge trail above Mingo Hollow, and I haven't gone back since. Not even close. My Uncle Hank has this old cabin tucked into the Appalachian woods, South Kentucky, somewhere out near Stokes Hill. The place is about 6 miles down a gravel road that's so narrow if you pass another car, someone's backing up. Every summer, my cousins and I would stay there for a few weeks. No cell signal, no internet, no cable. Just a cabin, a busted generator, the woods, and the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I was always excited for it. Weird maybe, but I liked how disconnected everything felt out there. Jeremy and Lacey, my cousins, made it fun. Jeremy was a year older and always full of wild ideas. He'd come up with dumb dares like climbing the chimney or sleeping outside in a tent made from a tarp and some fishing line. Lacey was his younger sister, sarcastic and quick with a comeback. She pretended to hate it all, but you could tell she liked being part of something. Me?